Hi, I hate string methods. And the reason behind this is there's just so many of them. So how do I know which ones I need to learn? Well, in simple terms, you need to learn what you think you need to learn. And what do I mean by that? Well, the thing is, you don't need to know every single string method that exists. There's just too many of them. And Python has made it very convenient for us to just choose whatever we need. So I think the best way to go about learning string methods is roughly know how to use them, how to read the help menu, and just pick a few favorites, I guess.
So let's kick things off by defining a variable called x in this case. And inside of x, we can write the string hello. And we can use x on all of our different operations to see what we can do with each different string method. Now let's start with .lower. So when we use .lower, effectively what we are doing is we are converting every single character inside to its lowercase variant. So if we write x.lower, we'll get hello as whatever's returned. And yeah, as you can tell, the h was capitalized and that got turned into a lowercase h, but every other letter remained the same. Again, conversely, we also have a .upper. So if we try x.upper, we can turn everything to capital. And this is very useful because we can use this in programs where we have to take input from users. Where, for example, let's say we're trying to check for whether a user wants to try again. And the thing they have to enter is again. In this case, whether they enter it in all caps, whether they enter it with a title, whether they enter it with all lowercase, we are able to kind of standardize it and make sure that the input is easier to deal with and work with. So beyond this, now we have other things we can look at, like .capitalize. This is similar, but I would need to define a different thing over here. Let's say hi in all lowercase. If I put y.capitalize with a z, because American, it should give us hi with a capital H. And in this case, yes, it is just a capitalizer at the start. It just turns it into a capitalized form of the original thing. This, generally speaking, is useful if you are in a hurry and just trying to make it produce nice, readable, human-readable output. So yeah, you can take note of that. Beyond this, there is swap case, which is quite funny to work with. Let's say we have x.swap case. We get this, which is interesting. I do not see any reason to have this as a thing in Python, but it's interesting to know. And yeah, maybe there's some really niche use case for it, but I don't think we're ever gonna come across it. So yeah. Okay, beyond this, let's see what else we have. We can talk about stripping now. And in Python, stripping effectively removes white spaces from either the left, the right, from both ends, or depending on whichever kind of strip you use, it can modify the string in such a way. So let's assume we have a new string. Let's call this one z. And in this case, we have space, hello, space, and then we enter it, right? Now, if we ask for the value of z, there is a space in front and behind of hello. And sometimes when we get input from a user, we want to get rid of whatever space is there. Or even if we're reading from a file, sometimes we want to get rid of weird spacings here and there. So how do we get to do that? Firstly, we can use z.strip. And if we do this, we effectively get the white space removed from both the start and the end. However, if you have some formatting thing and you want to remove it only from one end, you can try z.strip. But instead of just putting strip, you can put lstrip, or you can put z.rstrip. Again, very evidently, it just strips from the direction in which you have asked it to strip in. So if you asked it to lstrip, it will strip from the left. And if you do it from the right, then you have to use rstrip. Okay, now beyond this, we also have replace. So replace is quite fun. You can use this in a lot of different interesting ways. It effectively replaces a certain substring as part of a string. So let's say we have the infamous classic example banana. Let's say I do d dot replace, and the two parameters you take in firstly are what you want to replace and what you want it to be replaced by. So let's say I want to replace A with I, and I enter this. Let me just copy this so I can show you the next one. If I do this, it will show Benini, which is because all of the A's were replaced by an I. Simple. Now, what if I did more than just one letter? Let's say I did this. In this case, it would still work. It would say BB. This sounds so weird. The reason why it does this is because replace works not only with individual characters or letters, but it does work with smaller substrings. So you can use this in a lot of very useful ways in file formatting as well. Like if we take in data from a text file and you want to replace all of a certain thing, or if you want to modify, let's say, all of a given large chunk of data you just chucked into a string, you can use replace. It is way easier too. It's one of the most useful Python commands, I would say. Then now we have this thing called remove prefix and remove suffix. So let's say we have okay, I got a good one. Let's say we have unhappiness. Okay, now if we do this and we have f dot remove prefix, and in this case, inside of the parameter, we write un, the return value will be happiness because it just removes the part of it that is at the start that is the same as what you've declared inside of the string. And now, if we change this to ness and we change prefix to suffix, it's going to say unhappy. And yes, this also works because it takes from the back based on what you've declared it to take. Great, that's amazing. Now we've finished suffixes. Let's move on to the next one. Now we have find. So find is extremely useful because if you have a really long string, like a really long string, and you need to find a very specific set of characters or identify a specific field inside of it, then you can use find very easily to just grab it and find what position it's in. So let's say we have the string hello world, and in this case we want to dot find world. If we run this, it'll say 5, and the reason it does this is because it'll go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at the 5th position it hits word world. And yes, firstly, it does identify the first possible instance in which it finds the substring, and secondly, it does work with individual characters as well as larger substrings. But yeah, the point is that it does not start at 1, so you have to keep that in mind if you are looking through your word or your string for a specific substring. In most cases, you can kind of like mess around with the number to find exactly where it starts from, and as long as you get the general gist of it, being able to take this number and use it for example, comprehension should be perfectly fine as well. So yeah, this is a very useful function as well. I would say it's one of those really useful functions you'll find yourself using a lot. Yeah, beyond this, let's look at rfind. So let's see, AABBCCBB dot rfind. So rfind effectively finds the last index of a substring. So remember how I told you that the find function finds the first possible? Rfind can be classified as reverse find. In this case, if we put BB and we hit enter, it'll say 6, which is because it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, including the 0, this would be 6. And it hits the B already. And it finds from the back. So how I would think this code works is that it effectively goes from the back and identifies the substring, and then it counts forward from that instance to see how many characters are before it. So yeah, very useful as well. It's all about specific use cases you need to find. Now, we can look at index. So index is very, very similar to find, but there is one difference that index has. Let's say we have dot index over here, and let's say we wanted to search for the letter E, right? If I did this, it would say 1 because it's in the first position, not the 0th position. However, what if I wanted to search for Z? It would give you a -1 in this case, which is what differentiates it from find. Because it will say, okay, there is no character Z here, let's return a value that says -1. Again, very useful. It's quite useful in determining whether your large chunk of text has a certain thing or not. It does not go in with the assumption that it does have that certain thing or contain that certain thing. So yeah, use this where you will. Another very interesting function that I would like to show you is count. So let's say we have which is the noise you probably make when you stub your toe on the door. Now let's say we have this dot count. And in this case, we can input A as the parameter. I think you can see where this is going. It would say 19 because it can identify 19 different A's inside of this. And if we put AA, it would show 9 because it can identify 9 different instances. So yes. By the way, to check whether any of these specific string methods work with single characters, with multiple characters, or whatever parameters, you can do your own research online for this because it does depend on the method. But a lot of these methods work for both singular characters as well as substrings. Now, let's look at starts with and ends with. Now, these are checkers. They don't exactly sort of change the string. They just tell you if something does the thing or not. So let's say we have Python. It's easier to show you than tell you. Let's say we have Python. And we put starts with, and we put pi. If we enter this, it'll say true. And again, if it does not, like if we do this, it would say false. So this is a return value that you can use in validating whether your large string starts or ends with something. It's quite useful. And again, just like how there is starts with, there is also ends with. And in this case, if we wanted to put on, ta-da, it says true. Amazing. Great. Now let's look at some other interesting validation methods. So let's say we have a string. And keep in mind, this is a bit tricky. Let's say we have a string with only numbers. In this case, it is still a string. It is not an integer. It is not an integer. Keep this in mind. But it does contain only numbers. And if we put dot is digit, it will say true because every single thing inside of that string is a digit. So you can think of it as kind of the code trying to typecast this into an integer, and if it works, it outputs true, and if it doesn't, it outputs false. Which is quite useful, I would say. For example, let's say you wanted to take in phone numbers or credit card details. This is one way you can do it and validate that they didn't just enter gibberish. So again, similarly to isDigit, we also have isAlpha. So let's say with A, B, C, D dot isAlpha. Great, it'll say true again. And yeah, this is true again because it does show that every single letter inside of the string is an alphabetical letter. Now, here is an interesting one that kind of combines both of these. This is the one that says isAlNum. And in this case, if it has both alphabets and letters, this is considered alphanumeric. And isAlNum would return true. So yeah, this is also very useful. Again, it has its own use cases. Just make sure that when you do use this, you don't confuse the three so that your code does not validate something wrongly. yeah, again, we have is decimal, is space, and a lot of other similar things, which I don't think I need to show you because they are very niche in nature and you generally speaking would not use them. Then we have is upper and is lower. So let's say we have hello like this and we put dot is upper. If we do this, we're going to get false. And the reason behind this is because it is all in lowercase. And if we do this, but with this as this, it will get true because it is all in lowercase. You might remember something. We did this earlier on. Yeah, don't confuse this with that. This sets the string. This gives out a value of the string being converted to that form. So if you put x.lower, it converts it into all lowercase. This just checks whether it's all lowercase. And the same goes for upper. So make sure you can distinguish between what's a validation and what changes the string. So yeah, again, there is also is title. And how you can look at it is hello world dot is title. It should give you true because it is title. So yeah, use this as you will and as you can. Now let's break out the big guns. Let's go to splitting and joining. If you have ever worked with CSV files, text files, or any sort of file handling, file I/O, you'll know what a pain it is to process data and process large strings without split. So let me teach you split. So how you effectively split something is, let's say we have A, B, C, which are all separated by a space. We do dot split. This will effectively give you A, B, and C split into its specific characters. This is quite useful because you can just take in values and simply split it like that. Now let's say we have this and we would like to split it. You can use the parameter over here to split it according to whatever they are separated by. So let's say instead of commas, for some reason, the guy who gave me the file is a psychopath and gives me these instead. In this case, since it's still a character, I can still split it according to what it's separated by. So yes, just remember that no matter what it is, you can use it as a separator. Beyond this, we have rsplit, and the thing is, I don't really know if I should teach you rsplit because it's effectively the same thing. But you know what? Let me show it to you just because it's useful to know. So let's say we have the same thing, A, comma, B, comma, C. And we put dot rsplit, and then we take this, then we have this, and we have the second parameter, which is 1. Over here, what's going to happen is that you are going to split, effectively, the first set of things from the second set of things, and the splitter, in this case, would be this. So yes, this is one way you can use it, but generally if you are newer to Python, I would recommend you just stick with split because the cases for rsplit, or even the use of the second parameter, is very rare, at least in my experience. Great, so beyond this, we also have split lines, which is different from split because you can use \n. \n and \whatever, all of these different backslashes you may have seen across programming, they're all considered escape sequences, which is, you can think of them like a special way of writing things into your code that the code can identify and act on. So let's say I have \n over here, and then I write hello, and at the start, without any spacing, I write hi. The code, if I print this, what? Oh, what? That is very weird. The code will effectively print them into two lines because \n is kind of treated not as a string, but rather as, hey computer, ignore that this is a string and do this thing now. So yeah, In this case, if you have escape sequences inside of your text, like let's say you have this, but let me add one more. So backslash and yo. In this case, if this is our text, then we can do dot split lines. Oh, I can't type. Dot split lines, and it will effectively split all of these into specific lines depending on where the escape sequence is placed. Yes, you will lose the escape sequence in the process, but it is a good way of separating things based on the escape sequence itself. So along this kind of line of joining things and separating things, let me show you dot join. It joins an iterable with a string as its operator. So let's say we have this, right, a dash, and we want to dash dot join, and in this case we input a list, and our parameter, which is the list, sorry, our argument, which is the list, in this case we can write 2025, which is the year it is now, comma, the second one we can put, let's say 04, and the last one we can put 19. In this case, if we take all of these and we enter it, it would output a date, which is because it uses the dash as a way of joining all of these different strings together. This is again one of those extremely important things in Python I would recommend you take note of. So that is about it for the basics of what you can do in terms of joining and stuff. Alright, now let's get on to the bonus stuff. So yes, let me teach you a few bonus, interesting, and not exactly always useful kind of checks and string methods that I guess I would say I take joy in teaching. So let's say we have a var underscore 1, right? In this case, dot is identifier, effectively, it gives you the output on whether it is a valid identifier. So in Python, identifiers have certain rules. You, for example, can't start an identifier with a number. So if we go and start doing 13 var 1, it would say false. So this allows you to check kind of on the go whether something is a identifier or can be used as an identifier. Then we have another very interesting one, which is printable. So if we have hello backslash n and we put dot is printable, the output would probably surprise you. So remember what I mentioned about backslash n? You can't print backslash n. Like if you ask the computer to print hello backslash n, it'll just put hello and then leave a line, because backslash n is a non-printable escape sequence. So if you hit enter, it'll say false, because when you print hello backslash n, like I'm going to do now, it will print hello and leave a line instead of putting hello backslash n, which is a bit complicated, but it is a very important thing to know when you're learning programming. Now we have is ASCII. This is also very interesting. So if we have hello dot is ASCII, this will obviously output true because H, E, L, L, and O are all ASCII characters. But certain things are not ASCII characters. ASCII is a very specific set of symbols that can be typed by a computer. And a lot of symbols, like let's say very complicated symbols in foreign languages, like maybe Chinese or Russian, may not be reflected in ASCII. And as a result, certain characters are not ASCII, even if they are printable or can be shown on your computer screen. As a result, to identify whether a character is ASCII or not, you can use the isASCII method. So that is about it, actually, for all of the different string methods I wanted to show you. These are just so much to learn. So how are you going to learn all of these? Well, there's a very simple solution, which is the Python help menu. Okay, here's the secret about programming no one ever tells you. we don't memorize things as much as you think we do. No one sits down there with their journal or their book out and just writes all of these escape sequences or all of these string methods and just memorizes them, commits them to memory. Maybe some people do, but the vast majority of us don't. We have this thing called the help menu in Python, which effectively you can use it as a way to ask for help. And if you write help and you put str, it's gonna squeeze some text. Double click on it, bam, it has all of the different methods you can possibly use. You can just use Ctrl F to search for the specific method you're looking at. And let's say we have isUpper. It tells you about how you can use it, what it does, and it's actually quite coherent. So yeah, use this. You don't need to memorize anything. However, I'm not saying don't learn these. It is quite useful to learn string methods, especially if you're working with anything in programming that's not just math. So if you're reading data, if you're doing analysis on text, there are a billion use cases for string methods in Python, and I would recommend learning these. So yeah, that's about all I have for you today. Thanks for joining, and I hope you learned something new. Bye!